Joshua Smith here, and welcome to the GSD Mode Podcast. Now get shit done and smash that subscribe button now. What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode Podcast interview. Every single week, I interview top real estate professionals and top entrepreneurs that are out there dominating their space. These are people choosing to not live a life of mediocrity, but instead to go out there and create big, amazing, epic lives for themselves, for their families, as well as have a big impact on others. And today, guys, we have another epic, amazing rock star guest here on the podcast. So our guest today, Logan Freeman, is a real estate agent and also a real estate investor. He found his niche in the with working with investors, which he continues to do today. Represents a lot of investors from all over the country that are investing in his market. But through this, has become a mega investor himself, which is projected by the end of this year to have about $100 million under management, about 1,000 units under management in his own portfolio. And I'm telling you guys, man, not only are you going to get a ton of great real estate and business knowledge and information out of this podcast interview, you're also going to be pumped up. You're going to be amped up. This guy brings the energy, is just an extremely inspirational and motivational human being. And I know you are going to love this interview. Now, real quick, before we jump in, if you haven't already, make sure to snag a copy. It's a free copy of my new book at JoshuaSmithFreeBook.com. You can grab a 100% free. There's nothing being sold. No BS like that, you guys. A 100% free online PDF digital copy of this book. The book is called Dominate Your Real Estate Business, Top Tips from a Top Producer, where I'm just giving you tips, strategies, methods, and things that I've done and continue to do during my 15 plus year long real estate career that allowed me to become one of the top realtors and team leaders on the planet. So make sure to snag your free copy today. I know you're going to love it, and I'd love to hear your feedback on the book. Again, JoshuaSmithFreeBook.com. All right, let's jump into this amazing interview with Logan. All right, Logan, welcome to the GSD Mode Podcast, my friend.
Thanks for having me, brother. I am ready to add some value today. Ready to drop some fire, man.
Yeah, no, man, I'm stoked and honored to have you on, dude. I mean, you're a guy that's done so much in this business and from the agent side, but then also evolved into your personal investments and your investment firm today, and just continuing to crush it, dude. So I'm stoked to jump in. And before we talk about all the amazing things that you're up to now today, I'm always intrigued in our guest journeys that led them here in the first place, man. So wind the clocks. Like, how did this real estate journey, how'd this begin?
All right, man. So take it back to Jefferson City, Missouri, which is the capital of Missouri. I grew up small town, government town. Carol Dweck says there's two mindsets, the growth and the fix. I would say more or less everybody in Jeff City has a fixed mindset, and that's okay. It's fine, but it just wasn't what I was looking for in my life. I've always been just grabbing, I've always been like, man, can I get that? Can I get that? How do I get that? And I didn't have anybody to show me how to, so I just started to work at it. And when I was 13 years old, I asked my mom, how do I start making money? She's like, well, you can't get a job because you're 13. I'm like, bull crap. I'm going to go get a job. So I started doing all the stuff around the neighborhood. 14, Mom, how can I get a job? How can I get a job? And she's like, you can't do it. And I was like, I'm going to do it. So I figured out a way to get my school to say, hey, his grades are good enough that, he can work a certain amount of hours. And I found myself a job, sweeping floors, doing dishes at a catering business, and then throwing hay for 2 days out of the week as well for 10 hours. So, baling hay, doing dishes, putting money away. By my 15th birthday, I started my first Roth IRA. And so I kid you not, man, I had to have my mom there open up that account for me. So I saw my mom work her tail off, as I was growing up, and I always wanted more. I always wanted better. I always wanted to, I don't know why, but I was always striving for that next level. And early on in my life, I just did it through athletics, right? So I was a football player, basketball player, got a scholarship to play in college, got picked up as an undrafted free agent with the Oakland Raiders after that, but then got cut. So I've just worked at everything that I've really tried to accomplish. Had some struggles along the way, but I would say that, there has been a few really big turning points in my life. The first being, whenever I was cut from the NFL, I'd identified as that athlete my whole life. And I was like, okay, well, who are you as a man? Who are you going to be? Who do you want to be? That was my first one. The second one came not too far after that. After I was cut, I was 335 pounds at the NFL Combine, and I lost 120 pounds in 6 months. So I got down to 219. I put a little bit of that weight back on, but anyways, that's what kids will do to you, right, man? So, I that was a big turning point in my life. The second turning point in my life was when I went back to finish my master's program at school. I had to get a job, and I had to pay for tuition because football wasn't paying for it anymore. And so I drove an hour both ways to and from work, and I would listen to podcasts, man. And this was back when Lewis Howes and John Lee Dumas were really the guys on the podcast. Yeah. School of Greatness and Entrepreneur on Fire. And I was like, what is this? Why are they not teaching this in the schooling that I'm paying $25,000 a semester for? Like what's happening here? Why am I not hearing about Stephen Covey, Zig Ziglar, Darren Hardy, Tony Robbins? Where's that stuff? So I started to educate myself, and that's where I got the real estate bug. But when I finished my master's program, my dad, who is a strapping Native American, 6'2", 250 pounds, showed up at my college to help me move out. And he couldn't make it up the stairs. And I'm like, man, something's going on. And I didn't know what it was. But my dad had been battling drugs and alcohol addiction his whole life. And when he moved me out, I saw him 2 days later or 3 days later at Christmas for our family. My parents are divorced, but I saw him at Christmas. And that was the last time I saw my father coherent. In less than 14 days, my dad died of a stroke that was induced from liver cirrhosis and his bowel shut down. So that was a big decision point in my life, man, that really had to say, whoo, rocked me to my core. And if you're watching this, you can see my faith is super important to me. But then having that foundation of personal and professional development was super important as well. And then the third big one happened 3 years ago when I thought I had this safe, comfortable, cushy 6-figure sales job here in Kansas City. And I get called in at 6 a.m. one day, and they're like, hey, we're letting you go. It's like, well, I just got married. I got this house. I got this. I got that. So I decided to take control of my own financial future at that time and started my own businesses. So that's who I am today, man. That's how I got to where I'm at right now, and happy to dive into any of that if you want.
Yeah, no, I love that, dude. So then, so if I heard right, through listening to the podcast and some of the connections and, mentors that you were introduced to, if you will, that's where you got the real estate bug. Did you jump into real estate as soon as you realized how vulnerable the corporate world was and we're like, screw it, man, I'm jumping full into real estate at that point?
Yeah. So I started buying real estate when I first moved to Kansas City and started doing live-in flips, the bigger pockets method. And I did that a couple times. It was successful, but then got busy with work and getting married. So I stopped investing in real estate. But my real full-time, I guess, journey started 3 years ago when I was fired. My friend had a company that was Kansas City's fastest growing companies. He had secured this large client, which was a $50 million fund buying single family homes here in Kansas City. And in less than 10 months, I had already done over 120 transactions with those guys. And so was head of acquisitions over there, but I was also running a sales consulting firm at the same time. And 6 months into that job, or I guess into my entrepreneurial career, my wife said, I'm pretty impressed with what you've been able to accomplish, but you're not, all you do is complain about this consulting that you're doing, and all you do is talk about real estate. She said, why don't you focus on one of them? I said, that's a really good idea. And so I dissolved that sales consulting company. Took me a couple months. And then I went full time into just real estate, buying it myself, and then got from the single family side over to the commercial multifamily side. So that's how I got into it.
Yeah. Love that, dude. So then, so you're representing this fund as an agent out there finding them properties. And again, this was kind of your side hustle, but what'd you say? You did 120 transactions in 10 months?
Yep. Yeah, we're doing 10 to 12 a month, man. And, not only did I do about 90 of those with the fund, I did 30 single offs from folks that I built relationships with off of Bigger Pockets. So 30 other transactions with investors that did not live here in Kansas City. So, I was just hustling, man. And this was when 3 or 4 years ago when Kansas City, you could still buy, renovate, rent it out, refinance, and repeat. It's hard to do that now in good areas, but 3 years ago, you could still do that when you're buying cash, closing 7 days. So, but yeah, it was a grind, man. I think I still have my tracker. I was looking at 10 to 12 houses a day, 5 days a week, making offers on 75% of those, estimating the rehabs on every single one, walking the properties. I mean, you name it. I was in my car just driving around the city, taking notes, getting back home, putting them into the underwriting model and getting them sent out to investors. So it was a grind. It was grueling, but I had a recipe, and that recipe was working. So I was just working it, man.
Yep, love it, dude. So then, did you when you got fired from your job or let go from your job, did you continue with that? Did you go just full time, still representing the fund, or at that point did you go off on your own?
Yeah. So, when I got fired from my W-2 job is when I started that sales consulting company, and I took the job as the head of acquisitions. 9 months, 10 months in, when the fund stopped buying, I realized that I wanted to get into the commercial and multifamily world. So I moved my license, and then I bought a couple properties myself and learned a lot on those transactions. And so that's where my license is now with a commercial and multifamily brokerage, and we started our own acquisitions company as well.
Yep, love it, dude. So then, at what point did you? Because I'm guessing, man, you're representing investors. You're seeing, you're getting a formula down, as you mentioned, man. You got the process. You know what it's looking like. You're seeing the money that these guys are making. I'm sure it's creating. You're getting extremely intrigued of becoming your own investor. And I think every real estate agent I know, I think at the end of the day, everybody's dream is to become an investor and become their own client.
That's right.
Right.
100%.
So then at that point, like at what point did it transition from, representing investors, which you may still do today, but having more of a focus on growing your own investment portfolio?
Yeah. When that happened, when I moved my license over from the commercial and from the residential brokerage, which I was the only agent there, but then moved it over to the commercial and multifamily side, that's when I started to acquire properties myself and then be thinking about how to build that business. I didn't have that business yet. So I did a couple, 3 or 4 one-off projects with a couple different groups here in Kansas City. But that company really didn't start or be formalized until about 2 years ago. And I think it was important for me to always be working on the acquisitions, but I learned that you can work on an acquisition for 4 or 5 months and then it not happen. And then you're out of any dollars whatsoever. So that had me thinking, especially now that we're going through COVID, it was like, what is there a need for in the commercial and multifamily brokerage? And I found it. I just took the same methodology of representing out-of-state buyers on the single-family home side and started to do it with 1031 exchanges on larger properties. And so I built this process out now that helps folks identify properties, get them financed, get property management in place, help with the contracting, any general contracting that needs to happen, and kind of just opening my own team up to these out-of-state buyers. So still doing that, just on a larger scale. So I mean, the lowest transaction that I'll do is about $1 million here in Kansas City. We do about 2 or 3 of those a month. 1 to 7 million is really my sweet spot, because anybody above 7 million, getting into the double digits, they usually have their own acquisitions guy. They don't need me. But somebody who came into a property, they want to sell it, they want to get into something else, or maybe they added value over. And I just completing a deal tomorrow. They're selling a property in Phoenix and transitioning that into 2 properties in Kansas City, right? So, it's really important to know who your client is, and that's who I've really focused on, is somebody that's doing a 1031 exchange that has no exposure to this market. I can open up my own relationships and then my own knowledge, and that's valuable to those folks.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. And yeah, getting extremely clear in your niche is so important, and
Yep.
you've done that, as you just articulated. And I love that you talk too about the amount of hustle and work it takes and took, for those, when you were working for that fund and so forth. I don't think a lot of agents are prepared for it, but the upside is you don't have necessarily the emotional component, like once you get them under contract, usually it's pretty easy that you're not having to deal with emotions and getting calls at 10 o'clock at night from a client freaking out and so forth. So there's a lot of work on the front end, but there's also some of the work that gets minimized, if you will.
Yeah, I always tell folks, I've never really done retail transactions. We've always bought streams of income, and they just happen to be in the form of roofs and foundations, and so that's really, really important to note is that, when you're looking at these deals, the work ethic is, that's the only way. It was a numbers game, man. It really, really was. It was just like when I was making 250 cold calls a day. I knew exactly how many calls I needed to make. Out of those, I would get this many interested people. Out of those, I could set this many meetings. And it was just doing the work. And so just staying disciplined and focused on it. It was the same thing. Get in my car. It's snowing outside, 3 feet of snow. Getting in my car, putting my boots on, freezing my tail off and going and walking properties because nobody else is. And so that was the mentality that I had, that, it was the speed of essence. I mean, the time of the essence is real in real estate. And so just speed was really important. So if a deal came on the market when I was still working that job, right now, I'd get in my car and drive, walk that property, estimate the rehab, and then get it sent out. And we'd probably have 2 or 3 offers ready to go on it. So, it wasn't sexy by any means, but it worked. And the best motivating factor for me was success. So as I was having success and more success and it was working, that just motivated me to even work harder.
Yep. I love that, man. So what, with you talked about who your ideal client is, which you're very clear on. And you shared the example of the closing that you have coming up with somebody from here in Phoenix,
Yep.
Arizona. And, I'm guessing that a lot of your clients are from out of state that are purchasing in your market, as you mentioned, doing a 1031 and so forth. How are you reaching these people? Like, what are you doing to market to them? What kind of a message are you doing? Like, what's working well for you to find these these clients that you're working with?
Yeah. So I think the biggest piece is my online presence. And what I mean by that is, I have my own podcast. I make it a point to be on a lot of other people's podcasts, sharing messages, trying to add value, and then creating really specialized content towards those folks that are completing those transactions. So when they start to Google, Kansas City multifamily broker, I want Logan Freeman to be at the top of that list. And then they click on me and then they say, how do I work with Logan? Well, equity syndications or brokerage. Let me click on brokerage. Boom. There it is. We help 1031 exchange buyers. So making sure that that's out there, making sure that my YouTube channel is out there, making sure that I'm focused on adding very tailored content to the pain points that these people are going through. So right now we've created what I call the buyer's representation success system. And this is a 5-step process that, if followed, we have about a 95% success ratio finding a property and closing on it in that person's timeline. We've only had to defer a few deals over to DSTs, which, that's a failure to me. If I have to get somebody into a DST, it might be a win for them because they're not paying their boot money. But, for me, it's a failure because I wasn't able to place that capital in an income producing asset for them. But with that being said, man, I mean, it's just having this big presence. I was taught early on, instead of having to prospect all the time, you need to position yourself as the market leader. And so I just dominate LinkedIn. I am all over LinkedIn, and I've been working on, figuring out the algorithm on LinkedIn, which at the end of the day, don't worry about the algorithm, just add value and the algorithm will take care of itself because it changes so much. But then podcast is super important, creating ebooks, and then getting in front of these people, right? So I've got the process. Then I got to figure out how to get my process in front of the right people. We do that through Bigger Pockets. We do that through the podcast, and we do that through referrals. Those are our 3 biggest, what I'll call lead generation tools for us. So we're on the forums on Bigger Pockets. We've got great referrals networks with QIs and other folks that are doing that type of stuff, lenders, you name it, and then the third is the podcast, making sure that when they Google, 1031 exchange, Kansas City, that my content is popping up and they can start to engage with that. So I feel somewhat like a media company, not a commercial real estate investment firm, but I'm glad I was doing that pre-COVID, because now that COVID is here, the guys that had this type of presence, those are the ones that are starting to elevate themselves against their competition. So, that it's a multitude of things, man. Writing blogs is another one. But just putting myself out there and seeking first to understand and then to be understood, and taking Gary V's, methodology of jab, 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 right hook, right? And so I'm always jabbing, and when I right hook, it's good and it's there, and people engage with it, but I'm always trying to jab, give more than I'm trying to take.
Yeah. Love that, man. And I mean, dude, you got a lot going on, right? Because you're managing these properties, plus
Yep.
you have your own personal portfolio. There's a lot of work finding the properties. And then it's like, it's a whole other job in itself of creating all this content and so forth. And it can be very overwhelming,
Absolutely.
right? What do you do, I guess, when I say to get it all done? I know it might kind of sound like a silly question, but man, again, it's so overwhelming. And when I talk to agents, like, dude, you got to be on YouTube. You need to get your content created. They're like, dude, I think they get so overwhelmed and they're like, how am I going to spend 20 hours a week on just content creation when I'm so busy with these clients? I mean, how do you do it? How do you manage it?
Yeah. Well, I've been really intentional about this, and I call these things my profit producing activities. And so owning my schedule is extremely important. So now that I've been doing this for 3 years, I know the profit producing activities that if they get done, they will lead to revenue. And I just zero out everything else. My phone during this conversation will ring at least 6 times. I'll have 14 text messages and I'll have 42 emails, and those will all come in an hour's time for me. But I'm not at the mercy of that, right? I'm in this zone right now. I'm in flow of producing content that's going to reach a bunch of folks that they're going to hear. And at some point they're going to reach out and want to interact. And that is really, really important. So owning my schedule, making sure that I'm not doing feel-good calls. I'm not, doing paperwork during 8 to 5. I'm client facing. I call it the golden hours. 8 to 5 are my golden hours. I have to figure out when I got to do all of the other admin stuff, or my team will, right? So I put myself around people that are vested in my success, and I'm vested in their success. And they see what I've been able to do from a lead generation standpoint. So they are happy to play the operations piece, right? So it's really, really important to know what your sweet spot is. My sweet spot is client facing, content creation, and making sure that everybody knows what I'm doing on a regular basis. And then I can pass off what I would call just the operations piece to other folks that are happy to do that, because they're going to take a piece of the pie, but I continue to operate in that sweet spot. So I'm a really, really big stickler on my schedule, making sure that from 8 to 5, I'm focused on profit producing activities. I'm not getting stuck on email. I'm not getting stuck on calls that aren't going anywhere. I'm not doing a lot of education from 8 to 5, right? Like jumping on a webinar for an hour and a half is not, during the time that I could be connecting with people, raising capital, finding deals. I don't do that. I do that when I'm working out. I can get my content in at that time. I do it when I'm walking with my wife or with my kids. I'm pushing the stroller around. So it's just being really, really rigorous and intentional about my schedule, but also understanding the different profit producing activities for each vertical in the business and making sure those are scheduled, and then doing what Brian Tracy says, just eating that frog, making sure that, the one thing, if done, it makes everything else easier or unnecessary. Getting that done early in the day and just making sure that I own my mornings. So I got a really strict morning routine as well.
What is that one thing, man? Is it different each day, or, eating your frog first, as he calls it?
Yeah.
Is it different each day, or is it kind of the same thing that is just like, all right, man, this is the pain in the ass. I just got to get this out of the way.
Well, so if I'm raising capital, the main thing is making sure all of my documents are in our investor portal, making sure that the emails are going out, making sure that the folks that have reached out to me via email are on the phone with me. So it just depends if I'm raising capital or if I'm working on brokerage. And so, I have different days that I do different tasks as well. Sometimes that has to switch up. And one thing that I think I'm really excited about to share is this notion of being hard on disciplines, but soft on schedules. And so I might have a left curve. Somebody might fly into town last minute and call me up and say, hey, man, I'm in town. I know I didn't tell you, but, it might be a big fish, and I have to flop my schedule to make sure that person that I want to build that relationship with, I can go do that. So hard on disciplines, soft on schedules. But I've narrowed it down to say, okay, I have to post at least 3 times on LinkedIn per day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, and once around 3 p.m. That gets done every day. I got to do my journal. I use the High Performance Planner by Brendan Burchard. I do that in the mornings. I got to get that done before I get my day started, because if not, I feel like I'm all over the place. That helps me really create goals for the day. And so I have top 3 goals for today. Today's, again, I always talk about my faith, but mine is to live out the gospel by having faith and following Christ. The second one is be present and focused. No excuses. I have this terrible ear infection right now. You wouldn't be able to tell. I can't hear out of this ear, and it's hard for me to stay focused right now because all I can hear is ringing in this ear. But my goal today is to be present, to be focused, not to be on my phone when I'm on my, I'm sure you've had some guests that, when they get on a podcast, they might be looking over here at their other screen or down here, or you might even see them on their phones. I'm not going to do that. I'm adding value today. I've committed to this. This is your time that you're giving me and my time that I'm giving you. So I'm highly focused on that. And the third one is discipline equals freedom. I'm an intermittent faster, so I don't eat until noon or 1 every single day. I'm hungry in the mornings. Yeah, but I'm going to stay disciplined. I rolled my ankle trying to play basketball last Sunday, had to go to the urgent care, couldn't walk on this Monday, but you better believe it's Wednesday. Yesterday I hit 10,000 steps. Every step hurt, but every step, but my goal to that day was, hey, if I can't work out, I'm going to get 10,000 steps in. And I got that in. Same thing today. So discipline equals freedom. So I know those 3 things that I'm focused on today. And I had to move some things around on my schedule to make sure that I could achieve those things for the day. But I think it's just, each day is a little bit different, but I do have things that I do on a regular basis that have to happen every single day that have proven to get me the results that I'm trying to accomplish.
Yeah, love it, dude. So, you're a dude that's full of energy, that you can just tell that you're a guy that, man, you loving life and
Yep.
doesn't come without his challenges, but, right?
Sure.
Like, man, you're a driven dude, man. What keeps you so driven, man? And
Yeah.
We get those times too, where, it's like, it's easy to be driven when you're broken out of money,
Mhm.
right? And it's like, okay, well, I got to put a roof over over my kids and,
Yep.
whatever. But, good can become the worst enemy to greatness. And you can get comfortable. And like, what do you do to keep this energy and keep this drive going that you have?
Yeah. Well, I think it resonated with me back in my master's program. Somebody brought up a book called Start With Why, Simon Sinek book. I think everybody's probably heard of it now. But I write down my affirmation and my why every single day in this journal. I might be able to share it with or show it with you guys. You might not be able to see it, but it's a lot of writing that takes me 8 minutes every single morning. And I've gone through 6 pilot G2s this year, just filling out this journal every single morning. But that why is so aligned with who I am, what I'm trying to accomplish, and why I'm trying to accomplish. So I'm writing it down. Writing crystallizes thought. But I think you have to understand your why is really important. But you can't rely on motivation, okay? Motivation is fickle. What you have to rely on is inspiration. You have to be in spirit. And there's 3 things that Tony Robbins teaches on when you're feeling down, you're feeling, not, you're not worthy or whatever, you're feeling depressed, whatever that is, anxiety. I deal with some anxiety, working on these large transactions all the time. Holy cow. I call it transactional anxiety. I deal with that on a regular basis, but I've learned that I can change the way that I'm feeling through the triad, right? So it's changed my physiology. Like I'm in front of the lights and the camera and the screens a lot, but I realize if I can get out, I can take calls while I'm walking, I can change my perspective, right? I'm changing my physiology. I'm moving, I'm creating endorphins in my body. So physically changing that is one. The second is, what am I focusing on, right? Like if there's a problem, there's a challenge, there's something that's stressing me out. If I'm focusing on that all day long, that's going to make me feel very drained of my energy. So what I do is I step back into that fear, which is just false emotions appearing real. But I step back into it. I hit it head on and I say, okay, fear, let's talk about this. What are you fearful of? And then I do what's called fear setting. What's the worst thing that could happen, right? What is the worst thing that could happen that if it happens, that's going to be the worst result. And then usually the worst thing that can happen never actually does happen. So I step back into that fear and let that dissipate. It's just like my old athletics day. You got something going on with your hip. You get on the racquetball and you stick that thing on your hip until it hurts so bad until it dissipates, and it finally does. So it's similar to that. And then the last thing is language. I do not allow my wife to, or she's hates this about me, or maybe she just thinks I'm a goofball, but she's like, you never get sick. And I'm like, it's because sick's not in my vocabulary. Failure is not in my vocabulary. Fear is not in my vocabulary. anxiety, all of those things. I do not allow that language to be around me on a regular basis. I don't watch the news. So that's one way. The triad from Tony Robbins is one way that I change the way that I feel. But I mean, just hearing my story, you can tell, I mean, I've come from nothing. And I've created what we're trying to accomplish up to this point. And whenever I talk with somebody and they're like, man, I don't know, I'm trying to get into multifamily, but I don't have any money and this and that, and I just lost my job. I say, okay, let's isolate the biggest pain point in your life, right? So what is the number one roadblock that is focus? You can't see anything else because it's right in front of your face. When you go to sleep, when you wake up, every waking moment, it is affecting you. Like, what is that? And once you find out what that is, you can go solve for it. Instead of, and this is why I love goals, but I also hate goals, because you can have this big goal of being this multifamily syndicator and getting to 1,000 units and all this stuff, but you're broke as a joke. How the hell are you going to focus on going and being a multifamily syndicator with no money, thinking about where the rent is going to come from? So go solve for that. You have to be patient with results, but impatient with actions. And so goals are great because they drive you, but don't let some big ass goal get so blinding for you that you can't see everything else. Go solve for your immediate needs, for your expenses, for your physical life. You're a fit guy. You know, you got to focus on that stuff. So solve for that. And then after you solve for that, then you can start to feel this inspiration because you've removed those roadblocks. Everybody wants it. And that's fine. That's good. Set a goal. That's great. But what is it that's actually challenging you that you can't see anything else? If you just focused on that for the next 6 months, get that out of your life. Maybe it's a past relationship. Maybe it's 50 pounds. Maybe it's something else, you know, but figure out what that is, remove it, and then just start to feel the energy that you can have because you can start to focus on your actual goals and making yourself a better person. Success is not always about addition. A lot of times it's about subtraction. You know, a lot of writers, Henry David Thoreau, simplify, simplify, simplify. And so I have a lot of guys that reach out to me. They're like, you know, we see what you're doing and all of that stuff. It's great, but I can't pay for the rent. I can't pay for this. And I'm like, okay, well, how are you making money before? They tell me. I said, well, go figure out how to make that money and then get up earlier from 4 to 7, work on your hustle. And then from 5 to 8, work on your hustle. Yeah, but what about my golf? What about the games on TV? What about this and that? I was like, subtraction. You have to subtract. So I guess my tip for that would be figure out what that number one roadblock is in your life, solve for it, and then you can start to really go after some big dreams, man. I know I just rambled there for a little bit, but hopefully that was valuable.
Yeah, no, I loved every second of it, dude. That was awesome, man. So, you know, going back to, I guess the game that you're in. Well, I got a couple of follow-up questions here.
Sure.
So first, circling back to the content that you're creating, because I got to imagine that you've got to, number one, let people know of the deals that are available and the opportunities that can be had in Missouri in your market.
Yep.
But then I'm guessing too, it's a lot of education on the actual process. How do you do a 1031? How do you know, right? So when you're talking about your posting and your education and your ebooks and so
Yep.
forth, I mean, is that really what the content is circled around?
Yeah. So there's a few things that I've learned as I've been continuing to create content. And the first one is to repurpose it. Okay. So this is a really big piece. And, you know, you think about a content piece. Okay. So let's take a blog, for example. The blogs that I write are questions that I have in my head because I've heard investors ask me and nobody has a good answer for it. Those are the blogs that I write. So I know people are asking about it. Nobody else has written about it. And if they have, it's just been beating around the bush and sending people out to other links. I want to take all of those links, aggregate it into, 1,000 words, put it into a clear, concise, and compelling format that allows people to understand that. So I've been writing blogs about that, right? So like, what's the asset rich versus working rich? What is going on with inflation? What's the devaluation of the dollar? All of these different things, taking all of the information, dialing it in. Out of that blog, it goes up on my website. It goes up on LinkedIn as an article. I make a video out of it. My marketing manager makes a graphic and posts it on social media with the 3 to 5 takeaways of that. So out of that one blog, I have now 4 to 5 pieces of content. I do the same thing with podcasts, right? Like after we get this recording, maybe you could take one section of it, make a 3-minute video, put subtitles on it, and put it on LinkedIn. So that's the process of it, is reusing the content. But the way that I create it is listening to what people are asking me and then going and solving that problem for them, because that's the best content. Nobody else needs another piece of content on, hey, what's the difference between a 506B and a 506C syndication? I don't need to make a content piece about that. What I need to make a content piece is are people going to pay rents? Question mark. Like, that's what I need to go solve for. So that's one thing. And the second piece, man, is, I blend. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I'm not hiding anything. And so I blend personal and professional, I think, very delicately on LinkedIn, and so I try to show people that I'm a real person with 2 kids, a wife, with struggles. I try to dunk a basketball and break my ankle. That's the stuff that I'm posting. It's being real with people is really, really important. And then the content piece, man, I went through, Hunter Thompson is a guy that is a friend of mine, but he's also a multifamily guy and a podcaster. But he has this theory in his book that you can go through, and you can create 100 or 150 different just blog articles or content pieces. And he walks him through this process of brainstorming them and then figuring out which ones to go focus on. So for me, I broke those down into 5 or 6 different buckets. It was Kansas City, just in general, right? The geography, the market, just Kansas City. Then it was, okay, buyer representation. What does that mean? Why are you doing that? Then it was, active owning real estate versus passively owning real estate. And then it was, okay, deal sourcing. And then it was financing. And then under all of those topics, I've got 20 different articles that I can write on every single one of those. And then I test it, right? So I put it out there and see what people are actually interacting with. If they're not interacting, I pivot. Right. And so to me, it's a blend of personal and professional, reusing the content, but then also making it a priority, because, a video is definitely what's selling, I think, these days. And so it's important to be front and center, not be afraid of the camera, be a real person, and then staying consistent. Like I have posted on LinkedIn for the last year, anywhere from 2 to 5 times a day. And so, and just engaging with other people on there is super important as well.
Yeah, love it. Now with LinkedIn, man, is that a medium where you're having success finding clients, or is that more like I've got a lot of friends that, are raising capital through VCs and whatever, and utilize that tool. They find it to be a great tool to be able to raise capital. I mean, is it kind of all of the above where you find LinkedIn is just so good for your niche?
Yeah, I definitely raise a lot of capital off of LinkedIn because, just the user of LinkedIn usually has a bachelor's degree and, makes 75 grand. So I do raise a lot of capital and build relationships off of LinkedIn on that front. But, when I post about, when we get done and this is live, this will go on my LinkedIn and I'll have 3 to 5 takeaways on why this was an awesome episode and why you're so great and why people need to come follow you. But also, the things that if they listen, they'll hear, right? So they'll hear that, yes, I can help with 1031s, or you can be a passive investor. And so I've found a lot of brokerage clients off of LinkedIn as well. Hey, this is not an uncommon message every week. Hey, Logan, I own a condo out in San Francisco. We have rent control laws that are going into effect now. My tenant is getting ready to move out. I'm sitting on about $1 million worth of equity. I'm looking to do a 1031 exchange. I've never done that before. Would you be open to chatting? Absolutely. That's a perfect brokerage client. And so, LinkedIn, there's a lot of folks that are involved with just owning real estate and brokerage clients on LinkedIn, as well as passive investors, because there's a lot of doctors and, software engineers and that type of folk on there as well.
Yeah, love it, man. So then when it comes to we have primarily real estate agents that are listening to this podcast. Yep. Right. And if a real estate agent is like, man, I want to get involved in this niche that you're in. And, I think we're just so blessed as real estate agents where we can gain the expertise through our clients
Right.
right? Where then we can, over time become investors and partnership opportunities and so forth.
Totally.
But if somebody's totally green to this, right? Maybe they've have a focus on traditional residential real estate, but they want to transition into this niche. What would you recommend they begin, man?
So it's interesting because so many of even the commercial brokers that I talk to, they don't invest. And so I think it really starts with, are you looking at real estate as a business and a wealth creator, or are you looking at it from a jobs perspective? Like, is this your job or is this your livelihood? And so, a lot of folks are in I know a lot of my friends who are real estate brokers. They're, why you work so hard, Logan? Like, what are you doing? Like, why do you do all of that? And it's like, well, because I'm not in this business to work 2 days out of the week and play golf the other 3. Like, that's not why I'm in the business. I'm in it so, 5 years from now, I don't have to do anything except for spend time with my wife and my kids on a regular basis. They're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you are a service provider. You have deal flow. You are looking at all of these deals first. I'm sure that your principal at your company is picking off some of these every once in a while and buying them and doing the deals. So why would you not do that? And I think that people, one, they don't think about it, but two, they have this shift that, oh my gosh, real estate doesn't have to just be my job. It can be an avenue to wealth creation and passive income. So the first thing is just a mindset shift about how you're looking at your day-to-day, right? And your job. And if you're in it to be on a side and a hobby and do your transactions, and that's fine. No problem there. You can make great money doing that, and that's totally fine. But if somebody's interested in being what I'll call like a buyer's representation, person or an investor, agent, then there's a couple ways. I think the first way that you can really get easily started is through Bigger Pockets in the forums that are on that Bigger Pockets. I mean, all you got to do is set up keyword alerts for your market and start talking about what you're seeing. People want to hear the boots on the ground, what they're seeing in the market. What is stuff trading at? How fast are things moving? Do you have off-market deals? So start engaging in Bigger Pockets and set keyword alerts for your market, but also if you're interested in your market and multifamily, make a keyword for that as well. And then put that into your schedule, meaning, being on the forums, think about it as, making calls to property owners, right? Like, it is another profit producing activity that you have to stay consistent with. And so I built so many great relationships off of Bigger Pockets, and folks have reached out to me on Bigger Pockets from just seeing the value that I've just put into those forums, right? Just for free. And so I think that's a first really good way to start. But then second is you have to identify what your end goal is, and I think that you need to understand, okay, I want to get into single family home rentals. Great. That's fantastic. Or I want to own shopping centers, or I want to own multifamily properties. So identify what that is, and then figure out where you can start hanging around those people in your market. There's tons of networking events. I mean, the real estate world, people love to get together and drink and talk about, deals and talk about stuff that has happened, or just get together and drink and not talk about anything. But there's plenty of events. Use Meetup. I have my own Meetup. Use Meetup, where you can go talk to people who are doing this in your industry and start hanging out around them to kind of see what they're up to. And I think that's the best way to do it. And us as agents, typically you have the choice on where you want to put your license. So if you want to focus on investor type deals, go find a brokerage firm that has somebody that's killing it in that space, and then go add value to that person to try to learn from them. I have 2 guys in our office that they've quit their W-2 jobs just to come over on the investor side to learn what we're doing, and they're loving life. So I think that you have to engage on Bigger Pockets, identify what your goal is, and then identify somebody in your market that maybe could potentially help you kind of get some doors opened.
Yeah, love it, man. So what's the I want to classify it as all commercial, right? Because you have multifamily, then you got retail. I mean, there's so many facets to it. But, most when it comes to like the residential business right now, record low inventory rates, dude. And it's like we put a listing on the market, you got 20, 40 offers, right? Are you experiencing the same sort of thing with multifamily and the properties that you're going after right now? Is that, I guess, that much demand as well?
I would say there's a couple things there. And the first being, if it's in a great location and priced decently, there's a ton of interest still. But, there's still what we're seeing a gap between buyers' expectations of, hey, there's some risk here because we're in COVID, and sellers just still staying at the same occupancy that they were pre-COVID with the collections that they were at pre-COVID as well and haven't been affected. So you got buyers wanting a discount for something that is not happened yet. And so that has created, I think, a little bit of a gap between buyers and sellers on larger multifamily properties and commercial properties. Where we're seeing the opportunity is, sorry, let me step back. The third thing on that front is, actually completing due diligence. Out-of-state buyer groups, since they're not here, they don't feel comfortable trying to fly here, walk all of the units, and do all of that. Since we're local, we're actually able to go do the due diligence that's needed on that property. So those are the buyer gap between the buyer and the seller, and then the due diligence process. And then the third piece on that is financing. If you don't have bank financing relationships right now, you're not doing deals, in my opinion. And so, the credit markets are starting to loosen up just a little bit on the agency side, but not much. So there's less deals that fit those types of criteria. But then, I think that it's really, really important to note the same factor that, since there is less competition, that creates some opportunity. And so for my sellers that we've been, talking to, I still have a list of, oh my gosh, we send an email out to our buyer group every Monday. It's over 950 people. And I would say 50% of them are pretty active in looking at deals right now. So we've got this buyer-seller gap. We've got this financing gap. We've got this, due diligence gap. But then we also have all this interest because people are tired of seeing their hard-earned money just dissipate in the stock market. It might have come back, whatever. I don't even know what it's at. It doesn't affect me. But that's creating a lot of buzz into alternative investments such as commercial real estate. So now you've got a lot of people that maybe were pre-COVID were not interested, starting to think about commercial real estate. So if you have a good asset priced decently in a good market, that stuff's flying off the shelves. If you just put it up there to test the market and, you're trying to get top dollar, people are not willing to pay that right now. But if it's in line with the market cap rates on the true income, then we're still seeing a lot of competition on those projects. So, I think it's very specific to the asset class too. Before COVID, we were doing all kinds of neighborhood retail shopping centers. Think about e-commerce resistant, service-based tenants, Dollar General, Westlake Ace Hardwares. Then you got your chiropractor, your engineering firm, your architecture firm, maybe a restaurant or two. Those were trading, fast before pre-COVID. What we've seen now is that, in some of those buildings, we now have 4 or 5 months of rent data, right? Like occupancy data and collection data. So you can say, okay, well, during the height of COVID, well, maybe we're in it right now, I don't know. But during that period of time, these tenants still were able to pay. And so the value of that building is still kind of this, but there's less competition, meaning the prices are actually going down. So you see a little bit better cap rates in the neighborhood retail shopping centers between 8% and 9% here in Kansas City. Mobile home parks are flying off the shelves, priced crazy amounts. Office deals, there's still some deals to be had there if you're comfortable with office, and multifamily is still in high demand.
Yep, love it, dude. So then, I'm curious, man, because you're in so heavily in this space. When you watch the media right now, you hear 30% of Americans missed their July housing payment, whether it be rent or mortgage, and you hear all these tenants not paying and businesses not able to pay, but it's the media can sometimes be disengaged from what reality is, man. Are
Sure.
you seeing it as bad as far as these low rent collections right now and so forth, as bad as, some of the media outlets are portraying it to be?
So I think the media outlets, they really look at the major metros, right? So we're talking New York City, we're talking Los Angeles, and some of the, I don't know if you want to even throw Phoenix in there, but some of these larger MSAs that might be impacted, Miami, things like that, that are impacted much more heavily than maybe what the Midwest is. And so you have to really dive into the data. And so we use some different data sources, Yardi, CoStar, National Housing, the Multifamily Housing Council. And we're seeing something very interesting. So like I mentioned at the beginning of this interview, those three markets, Phoenix, Kansas City, and Indianapolis, are actually still increasing rents, right? I have 426 unit deal under contract right now. The NOI has increased $52,000 as we have been under contract for the deal. They are still implementing their value add, and they're still getting the better rents. So you have to be careful to listen to the media. You want to listen to it, but then you need to really dive into the details of where you're thinking about investing, because real estate is hyper local. And so, in Kansas City, we have we're beating the national average on unemployment, mostly because of the industrial workforce that we have here, the intermodal industry in Kansas City, the healthcare industry, and the animal hospitals here. It's unbelievable. So our unemployment is actually 2 or 3 basis points, I think, underneath what the national average is. And we're still increasing rents, and affordability is still really good. So I do read the headlines, but then I really rely on, creating my own hypothesis by the actual data that we're seeing and the operators that I'm talking to in the space. And so, I'm able to reach out to 2 or 3 people, and, between those 2 or 3 people, they have 10,000 units under under management. And so I'm like, hey, what were your collections like? Where was your struggle at? What are you doing to allow for maybe partial payments, things like that. So being proactive and just reaching out to folks who are actually doing it and not relying on those headlines. So, Kansas City, knock on wood, is still holding up really well. I think Phoenix is as well. I think that, maybe some of the bigger markets like Los Angeles, San Francisco, those markets might be feeling it. New York City might be feeling a little bit differently than what we are here in the Midwest. So, I think it's hyper local, and you gotta do the hard work of finding out the actual facts for yourself.
Yeah, love it, dude. And then, I'm curious, man, with these, you have so many people coming, from out of state, that are buying 1031ing in your area. And, is it common, and is there things that you're doing to find off-market deals for these people with the amount of flow coming in that you have?
So obviously the traditional brokerage component is extremely important. Tried and true methods, contacting property owners, talking to them about what we're seeing in the market is super important. It's not sexy, but we have a full service brokerage that does that on a regular basis, that we're continuing to talk to people. So that's one way. I think the second piece is, obviously being really active in the local organizations like CCIM, like the Urban Land Institute. And I make it a point to know a lot of property owners, maybe even guys like myself that are 10, 15 years ahead of where I am, to kind of see, hey, when are you thinking about maybe selling something? And if so, can we talk about it before you go shop at every brokerage firm here? So I think that, the traditional brokerage stuff is working. Networking is still working. The value add that we're doing with the content is still working. And then being really active in those local organizations has been helping a lot. So we've created a great referral network with lenders, with property managers, with contractors, and with title companies to say, hey, if somebody reaches out to you and you just hear those words, continue to introduce those folks to me, because ultimately it's going to bring you more business, because I'm going to help the transaction get the loan, get the title work that it needs, get the contracting that it needs. So just making it a point to add value to the service providers in my market has created a ton of referrals there. And then the traditional stuff, we've got 5 or 6 brokers calling on properties on a regular basis. And so, it's a hard go at it, especially right now. It's like I was telling somebody else who's a broker the other day, you're doing the same amount of work that you were pre-COVID for about 50% of the results. And that's frustrating. I get that. But if you stop now, 90% of a jet's fuel is used just getting off the runway. If you stop and you get stuck on the runway, it's going to take you 2 or 3 months just to get that jet back up into the air. And so, we're still going full force with, the actions, but the results, unfortunately, aren't what they were pre-COVID, but we're at least setting ourselves up that whenever, maybe the credit markets and the equity markets start to clear up a little bit, and maybe we have a vaccine at some point, we're going to be the ones that are running and not trying to pick themselves up from sitting on their hands. So, I don't know, man. It's hard out there, but you got to continue to take the action.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. And dude, it's so true. I mean, when we're experiencing the same thing, right? I mean, having to work twice as hard for the same result, right? Or less of the result. But it's, look, man, in any type of a shift, whether it be a market crash or, pandemic that we're all experiencing for the first time, it's like, look, in order to thrive, you first must survive. But I don't think what people understand is the future stacking of future business and that compounding momentum, dude, that it just, it might be a struggle today, but a year from now, stacking that future business too, you just blow up from it.
Yeah. I mean, just think about this line here. I mean, you say, hey, Mr. Investor, the last 8 months, 10 months, we've been going through a global health crisis. Let's just say it was in December, of this year. But during that period of time, our firm was able to source, identify, and close on over 550 units. What do you think we can do when there is no health crisis? Same with your team, right? Hey, Mr. Buyer, Mr. Seller, during a health crisis, we helped 15 people either buy or sell homes in this market during the health crisis. So we're going to continue to work like we did, pre-COVID with less results. And we know that, but we value your relationship. So, I mean, I think that it's the folks that are still, operating at the same levels, if not more or higher level, that people, at the tail end of this thing are going to say, oh my gosh, they didn't stop. They poured gas on the fire and just went harder. I think that's, Grant Cardone always talks about don't waste a good recession, right? Take 10X, action, which is great, and I think it's important to do. But when you legitimately think about the conversations you can have with, I'm just thinking about potential investors, when I talk to them maybe in December and say, well, how'd your year go? Well, we closed 6 deals. Here's what the volume was, and we were able to get those done during the hardest time of any type of commercial real estate investing that we've seen, at least the last 10 years. So I think you're right, man. It's just you got to push through.
Yep. So then, when you're going after this investor capital, if you will, if somebody's watching, listening to this, that's wanting to raise capital, what are the important things that you found that investors are really looking for, that you need to show them, that you need to prove to them to have that faith and trust into, handing over their hard-earned money, dude?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple things here. The first being, from just a fundamental and macro level of investing, folks are not necessarily educated on the benefits of real estate. So that's first. It's like, what experience have you done? What education have you done? If you don't know the 5 benefits, income, depreciation, equity buildup, appreciation, and leverage on real estate, let's start there. And so I talk them through those 5 points. If they've already, done that, they've experienced in real estate, then it's like, okay, let's move on to the market. Okay. So first is real estate in general. Then it's the market. Get them comfortable with the market. Tell them why people are moving to Kansas City or your market in Phoenix. Why is rent growth at 4% and everywhere else it's negative? Why is that? You have to understand that. So I write content pieces all the time around, why Kansas City, and I back it up by data. Then so it goes, real estate, market, then it goes me, right? Who's the sponsor? Who am I dealing with? What's your track record? How many deals have you done? What are the experience that you have? What are the performance of those deals? And then after all 3 or 4 of those things, then if we get into an actual deal and they're still kind of on the horn, then we start to talk about our actual investment thesis in Kansas City. But I don't ever talk about a deal until I go through and understand their priorities, understand what they know about real estate, what they know about Kansas City, what they know about me, and then we can start to talk about a deal. So it's a progression. I'd say that progression takes quite a bit of time, but that's what we're talking about, man. Is the hedge against inflation, through real estate mostly, and how these people can actually tap into some of their investment dollars that they already have, maybe in a 401k or something. So it's just talking about all those different things, and tax benefits is a huge one. So I'd say wealth preservation is top of mind for everybody right now, and wealth preservation is huge. So hey, don't lose my money. Right? Like, hey, my money can be lost in the stock market. Don't lose my money. So what is my money actually, getting me, and what is it backed by, right? So that's a big piece. And then it's, okay, great. What's the cash flow? Okay, great. What's the tax benefits? Okay, awesome. Then what's the appreciation? Because we don't live in an appreciation market, So I think it's really important to understand the progression that these investors are going through and the thought process that they're going through. And each person is different, but typically out of those two tracks, I can kind of identify where somebody's at along that progression and try to meet them where they're at.
Yeah, love it. Now, on a personal level, are you personally acquiring properties just in your market, or are you going outside of your market as well?
Yeah, we've been highly focused just here in Kansas City on our acquisitions. We're starting to look at a couple deals in the Tulsa, Oklahoma market. And believe it or not, I've got some really good connections out there in Phoenix and Tucson that we were actually looking at some projects with. A fellow podcaster, Ruben Greth with Bakerson. They're out there. They're multifamily guys out there in the Phoenix and Tucson markets. But most of the stuff that we're doing is in Kansas City. We've got a deal under contract up in Michigan right now, and I think we'll have a couple in Tulsa as well. But really hyper focus on a 3-hour radius here in Kansas City, Missouri.
Yep, love it, dude. So then, what's your vision for this, man? I mean, you're a young dude, highly driven. How big do you want to take this beast, man?
Yeah, well, we'll be at 1,000 units by the end of the year, so that'll be huge for us. We just bought a property management company, construction company, and we're starting an HVAC company. So building the ancillary businesses around the real estate portfolio that we've got is an interesting, track that I didn't really even think about, but thankfully my business partners are and have. But our goal in 10 years is to have $1 billion of assets under management. So, you talk about guys like Joe Fairless and Spencer Gray, they got 8,800, 8,900 units under management, and that's amazing. And it's incredible. So that's where we're headed, to be the sole GPs on $1 billion worth of real estate in 10 years. So that's the goal, man. It's a big one. It's a big, hairy, audacious goal. I told somebody the other day, and this was just in passing. I was just like, yeah, I think the first 100 million is going to be the hardest. And he just stopped me. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, just like, the first 100 billion is going to probably be the hardest. We'll be at 55 this year, but it'll probably be the hardest. He's like, you realize you just said the first 100 million will be the hardest. And I'm like, now that you've said that 3 times, yes, but that's what I'm thinking about, right? Like, I'm not talking about, doing one deal a year. This is scale. I always tell people there's a difference between being in the business of real estate investing and being a real estate investor. And I have picked and chosen to be in the business of real estate investing. And I've had folks that have, passively invested. They said, okay, great, Logan, will you teach me how to be an active GP? 100%. Sure, I can help you do that. They went and did the active GP deal, and they came back to me 6 months later and said, I am never doing that again. And I said, well, why? He said, because I didn't realize that I was going to have this, all the legal, the asset management, the leasing, all of these different things. And I'm like, that's why you should have watched that video where I differentiated between the business of real estate and being a real estate investor. So that's the goal. That's where we're headed. And I think we're going to be able to achieve that goal.
Yeah, no, I love that, dude. So what's been the biggest challenge, man? With you mentioned you'll be at 1,000 units for the end of this year. Like, what's been the, because all that sounds amazing and sexy, but we know it doesn't come without crazy challenges and work and obstacles. And what's been like, or some of the biggest challenges for you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the biggest challenge we're going through it right now is just the growing pains, and the growing pains of trying to have the right people in the right seats, in the right vehicle, headed in the right direction. And so right now, the 3 principals at our company are handling every aspect of the business. We'll get the property management and construction off of our plates pretty soon, which is great. But then we've got, K1s, we've got investor reporting, we've got admin stuff. I mean, we've got so much backlog of just the operations right now that I can't even go get another deal, even if I wanted to, because we have to handle the deals that we've got, right? So what do they say? If you chase 2 rabbits, you're going to catch none. And a bird in the hand is better than a bird in the bush. And so the biggest challenge we're seeing right now is just having to grow and having to actually hire people and train those people and keep those people happy, because we want to control the process. So if you want to control something, then you have to build it. And so I would say right now, I mean, the biggest challenge is we can't go look at more deals right now, only because we're so backlogged with the deals that we're doing, and we're having to handle so much of the admin work and the legal side of things. So just taking care of that and making sure we can solve for that. That's our biggest challenge right now.
Yeah, love it, man. I know we're going long on time here, Logan. But real quick, dude, if people, man, if they want to check out all your amazing content that you put out, man, if maybe they're interested in working with you in some capacity, if a client that's looking in your area, or maybe they're wanting to get involved, again, our listener base are real estate agents. And one hard part about this industry is there is no retirement unless we're intentional with it. So maybe they're looking to invest in, whatever that may be. Like, where's the best places, dude, to follow you, to get in touch with you and all that?
Well, I really appreciate that. And I would say LinkedIn is where I'm the most active. I want to be the Grant Cardone of LinkedIn. I just want to, if somebody thinks about Kansas City, they want to say, oh, well, you got to talk to this guy, So just my profile, Logan Freeman on LinkedIn, I'm super active there. People can reach out to me there. But then our websites as well, livefreeinvestments.com is kind of my brand specifically. Post a lot of stuff on there. And then, our actual acquisitions business is ftwinvestmentsllc.com. But again, LinkedIn is the easiest way to connect with me, to follow all of the content that we're putting out on a regular basis.
Yep. Awesome. And those watching, listen, we'll make it super easy. If you just scroll down wherever you are, we'll have all Logan's social media links, our handles, and all the links that he just mentioned right below that you can check out and click on. So last question for you, dude. If, Logan today, knowing everything that you know now over this, this journey and everything that all the knowledge that you gained, if Logan today could go back and have a conversation with the Logan when you first started this journey, give yourself just 2 pieces of advice that you feel would fast forward this success trajectory that you're on, what would those 2 pieces of advice look like?
Okay. So the first one is, don't tie your self-worth to the outcomes that happen in life. So your self-worth as a person cannot be tied to the achievements that you have done and have created. And so it's so important, because we get into this, on social media and everything, we can see the best of everybody, right? And everybody's on their own continuum along this success journey. And you can't take somebody that might look like they're this, just because they're the same age, that they might be on the same trajectory, and they feel it looks like they're somewhere ahead of you. You can't start comparing yourself to those people. And you can't have your self-worth tied to the achievements and the outcomes that happen in life, because we are not, we cannot control everything. So what you can control is your mindset and your actions on a regular basis. So that would be the first one. I mean, I think I just grew up, through athletics, just, I would get praise whenever I achieved something, when I got a good grade, or whenever I scored that basket or scored that touchdown. And as a lineman, I didn't score too many touchdowns, but, so that would be the first one, man. And then the second one is, be humble enough to leverage relationships, and just because you've read every book, just because you feel like you're educated about something, never write somebody off that you can't learn something from them. And so leverage relationships and cherish those relationships. If you had 5 really, really key relationships that you could build that would help you in your personal, professional life, emotionally, spiritually, physically, professionally, whatever it is, who are those 5 people, and how can you get more time with them, right? It's said that you're the sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, right? And there's some truth to that. But I think you need to leverage relationships, be willing to give without trying to take anything, and just see where that goes. Because I think for me, I wish I would have started really just adding value to people earlier on in my life without thinking what that person could potentially do for me. That shift happened about 7 years ago for me, but I think back in my early 20s and my teens and how much of a user I was, and I think that, some people get stuck in that a little bit. So leverage relationships, seek first to understand, then to be understood, and always, always, always try to add value to somebody and hear them out. And so those are my two things, man. I'll stop talking because I know we're going on.
Yeah, awesome, man. Such powerful words, dude. And I know how busy you are. You got, all this going on with your business. Plus you got, your family, and you have a new addition at home. And man, so you taking time out of your busy day to be here, dude, truly means a lot. Man, Absolutely. Your energy's off the charts, dude. I love jamming with you, dude, and truly appreciate you taking time to be here, dude.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, man. You just keep up the great work, brother. I told you this before I think we started recording, but just love the mission and love what you guys are doing.
Yeah, no, it truly means a lot, my friend. And those watching and listening, as always, we truly appreciate you watching, truly appreciate all your support. Keep up the amazing work, keep crushing it, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
See you guys.
Hope you enjoyed this GSD Mode podcast episode. Now make sure you get shit done and smash that subscribe button now.